The first English immigrants on Roanoke Island in the New World constructed homes and lifestyles alongside indigenous tribes before disappearing completely, leaving behind a coded message for later colonists. Where did any survivors of the bizarre events surrounding their disappearance go? What happened to the vanishing Roanoke Island colony? The English attempted to establish a colony in the New World on Roanoke Island, North Carolina, in 1584. The colony was abandoned the next year due to harsh weather, a lack of supplies, and poor ties with the local people. A further attempt at colonization was made 3 years later. As the immigrants struggled to survive and thrive, one of them, Captain John White, was compelled to return to England for supplies. Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the New World, was born in 1587 to White's daughter. White traveled to England against his will, leaving behind friends and relatives. He stayed for 3 years because the Queen had prohibited all shipping due to the Spanish Armada attacks on England. When White returned in 1590, the Roanoke Island colony had vanished, leaving only the words Crow and Crowdone carved on 2 trees. When White saw these words, he assumed the settlers had requested assistance from the Croatan Indians on nearby Hatteras Island. The settlers had already resolved that if they had to relocate due to calamity or invasion, a Maltese cross would be left behind. White discovered no such sign. The Croats had been sympathetic to the immigrants, and the English had been able to develop good relations with them when they established their colony in 1587. As a result, it was logical to believe that the colonists had gone to Hatteras Island while White was away. White was unable to explore the topic further due to bad weather and a dangerously reluctant sailing crew. Instead, he returned to England, leaving behind the colony's inexplicable disappearance as well as his daughter and grandchildren. He never came back to the New World. As a result, no one knows what happened to the English settlers on Roanoke Island. One theory for the departure of the English Roanoke Island colony is that they were able to assimilate with the Croatan people. Following English historians, it is believed that they mentioned a tribe of North Carolina Indians that spoke English fluently, professed Christianity, and named themselves Croatan Indians. Furthermore, between 20 and 30 English surnames from Roanoke settlers were discovered among the Croatan tribe, indicating that blending between the two peoples had occurred. Recently, the Lost Colony Center for Science and Research launched the Lost Colony DNA Project to determine whether the Roanoke settlers intermarried with the Croatans. Excavations on the ruins of an Indian hamlet at Cape Creek and Pamlico Sound near Cape Hatteras found not only Indian artifacts but also European trade products. While this proves that the Croatans had contact with the Roanoke settlers, it does not prove that the two peoples were assimilated. The Croatans were thought to have gone extinct by the early 17th century. Their immediate ancestors, the Lumbee, who still exist today, began to arrive some 50 years after the Roanoke settlers vanished. Observers have noted that one of the Lumbee people's distinguishing characteristics is their European appearance. The Lumbee had moved and established themselves in Robeson County by 1650. Although intermarriage between Croatans and English settlers is the most popular theory for Lumbee origins, it is not universally accepted. Some believe in the Cherokee theory, which holds that some Cherokees marching home after battling the Tuscarora with Colonel John Barnwell in the early 18th century elected to stay in Robeson County and intermarry with local populations. It has been reported that the Lumbee Earl tradition has 4 main migration theories. Although many believe that the colonists joined the Croatans and eventually became Lumbees, some believe that the settlers met a more bleak conclusion. The Dare Stone, discovered in the 20th century, reveals that the number of settlers was reduced to 24 due to disease and conflict with hostile indigenous peoples. Only 7 of the original settlers remained at the end. Eleanor White Dare, the daughter of Captain John White and the supposed creator of the stone, was one of them. However, it has been alleged that the Dare Stone is a fabrication. Furthermore, archaeological evidence has yet to show that the settlers died gradually, as no burials have been discovered. Nonetheless, academics have recently decided to revisit the Dare Stone. It was initially dismissed since other hoax stones appeared soon after it was discovered, but a re-examination reveals that it is distinct from the other fakes. The writing was done by a different hand, and the words are more likely to have appeared within the time span specified. Ed Schrader, a geologist and president of Brenau University in Georgia, where the Dare Stone is preserved, is cautiously optimistic about the latest findings. If this stone is real, he argues, it is the most significant artifact in the history of early European settlement in America, and if it isn't, it's one of the most spectacular frauds ever. Dare, Schrader continued, was moderately educated and the wife of a stonemason. Thus, she most likely possessed the skills required to create the inscription. However, before pursuing an expensive and exhaustive geochemical investigation, Schrader has asked a Brenau professor to form a team of linguists to do a more complete analysis of the language on the stone. Other hypotheses regarding what happened to the Roanoke colony include cannibalism by local tribes or the settlers dying at sea while attempting to return to England. 2 distinct theories about the Roanoke colony mystery made headlines in 2020. The first comes from Scott Dorson, a Hatteras Island local and amateur archaeologist who has spent over a decade excavating a location he believes is linked to the colony's strange disappearance. The researcher discovered beads, tools, and Native American arrowheads, as well as artifacts associated with English settlers. Dawson argues that they are remnants of a survivors' camp, where the majority of the colonists relocated and merged with the Croatoan tribe following the abandonment of the original colony and massive political eruptions and disagreements. The survivors' camp on Hatteras Island is supposed to have been an appropriate location for the expelled colonists to wait for the vessel returning from England. The separatists are thought to have finally assimilated with the indigenous tribe, reinforcing the prevalent view of what happened. The second study on the lost Roanoke colony, released in 2020, claims that survivors lived with local populations in what is now Bertie County, North Carolina. English pottery pieces dating from the 1580s, including jugs and pots used for food preparation, consumption, and storage, have been discovered in Bertie County, according to a press statement from the First Colony Foundation. The relics, according to the researchers, show that the Roanoke survivors lived at the site for a long time. The items, according to Phil Evans, head of the First Colony Foundation, suggest that at least one family from the lost colony of Roanoke lived there, and possibly some servants. The relics include a Martin camp flask and a Spanish olive jar, which are thought to be similar to pottery found at Roanoke Island's Fort Raleigh historic site and those discovered at the Jamestown colony site. According to Ashley Cowie, established Roanoke experts have strongly questioned the new findings related to this latest Roanoke colony theory.